It's the Karen Reed retrial. Last year, the case ended in a mistrial. The jury couldn't come to a unanimous verdict on all three charges. This case is about hard data, a crumbling relationship, and corrupt cops. Somehow in this case, everyone knows everyone, and Karen may be the most likely suspect, but she's also an easy target. While a new jury hears the case, we'll use our real law enforcement experience to break everything down. Is there a clue in the 911 call that everyone missed?
Yes, there's a man unresponsive in the snow.
Is he face down?
We just flipped him over.
All that and what it means for your weekend on the Comm Center. Wake up, America. It's the Comm Center with Drew Breezy. It's a TV show on the internet about two best friends who are called by a small town sheriff to investigate when a crop circle is found in the shape of a middle finger. I'm John. I'm an actual 911 dispatcher. Joining me, as always, is my podcasting partner with police benefits. His name's Andrew Baxter, but on the internet, he goes by the fake name of Drew Breezy. That doesn't stop him from being an authentic cop. Drew, I'm excited because the whole internet is abuzz with the Karen Reed retrial. Why don't you take us through the beginning of the case? Tell us what we're going to see today.
If you're already into the Karen Reed trial, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But this is a refresher for you, but I need you to stick around for the rest of the people in the comments who have questions or want to fight us on some of these points. If you're new to the Karen Reed situations, this is what we learned in the Linda Sturmer case. A lot of people watched the retrial, but never understood what the trial in the first place was about. That's the whole point of what we're doing today. We're going to talk about the players in the case. We're going to talk about the case itself, the night, everything that happened, and hopefully backfill you. So with all that in mind, John, do you want to just get into it?
Let's start.
John O'Keefe is a 46-year-old police officer with the Boston Police Department, well-liked, well-respected in the community. He took over guardianship of his niece and nephew when his sister and brother-in-law passed away. People describe John as the type of guy that would literally give you the shirt off his back. Karen Reed is a 44-year-old equity analyst and adjunct professor living in nearby Mansfield.
She was highly educated, certainly presented well in terms of, appearance and how she carried herself.
They met a couple decades ago, kind of went their separate ways. During COVID, they get back together and there's some rocks in the relationship.
This is January 29th, 2022, which is the morning they found his body.
On the verge of a potential blizzard and potentially some historic snowfall for us.
Blizzard warning. That's when our visibility falls under.
So a few hours before in Canton, Massachusetts, which is just southwest of Boston, from what I understand, it's like a 10, 15-minute ride or drive. It's a quaint little town. But a few hours before, they were bracing for this blizzard. And when you brace for a blizzard, just like here in Florida, when you brace for a hurricane, everybody tends to party because nothing's going to be open the following day. And, you prepare to hunker down. And as long as your house is in good order and, you got your plywood up. And I don't know if you have an equivalent of that, John. I mean, maybe you go to the basement where you are in Mississippi. But do you have a weather equivalent of that?
Yeah, we have blizzards here. We do the same thing that they do in Massachusetts.
Okay, very well. All right, so we'll pick it up. This is from WCBV, their YouTube channel.
Inside the first bar, Reed and O'Keefe greeted each other with a hug and a kiss. They visited C.F. McCarthy's and then another location called Waterfall Bar and Grill. Prosecutors say the two eventually argued that night, but witnesses who testified yesterday said they did not see any trouble between the two.
Okay, I'm sure it's pronounced Waterfall Bar and Grill. And it's in Canton, Massachusetts. Again, it's a quaint area outside of Boston. I love that area. I can't tell you how much I love that area. But there's a place called Waterfall Bar and Grill. They were at the other place first, C.W. McCarthy's or whatever. They were having they carried the party over to where this other set of cops, this is kind of, from what I understand, cop land, if that makes sense to you. A lot of public servants, a lot of first responders live in this Canton community. So they all kind of hang out at the Waterfall Bar and Grill. Our friends at Fleckus Talks would call this Americana. This is exactly what the front of the waterfall looks like, or maybe even the side. But so they take the party from the waterfall, and there's video footage of them leaving, everybody leaving. Like it's a rambling wreck. I mean, it's just a bunch of people in a gaggle. And they head over to 34 Fairview Road in Canton, Massachusetts. That's a famous address now, 34 Fairview. It used to be owned by a Boston police sergeant by the name of Brian Albert. He's since sold it. It was in the Albert family for many, many generations, apparently. And it was sold after this incident for some reason. This is what it looks on the outside. That flagpole is is also famous now. So here's the Albert family. If you the top two right there, Nicole and Brian, are the owners of the home. All of these people are interrelated somehow, like through marriage or whatever. John, I found this channel on YouTube that does like 3D animations. They use AI on stuff. It's called Drop Microdots, but they go by Microdots. This stuff is amazing. I love this channel. I think it's right up your alley too. I think you would like it. But I took some of their stuff and transformed it for our use.
That's good.
All right, so between 12:23 and 12:24, like it's an exact timing thing because they have all kinds of cell bright technology that shows where the phones were. This is a very, very data-driven investigation done by the DA's office. They know temperatures. They know where people were at the time. The defense is using all this stuff too. This is where things kind of take a right turn because this is a like supposedly John O'Keefe. It's like a movie version of John O'Keefe walking into 34 Fairview. Nobody can say, or nobody will say, that he made it inside the house. Okay, just remember that. That's an important fact. Karen can't say that she saw him go in. Obviously, John can't say whether or not he made it in. And the people that were inside the house will not say whether or not he made it in. So the significance of what you're about to see there was that there was a pickup truck that was pulling in behind the black Lexus SUV that Karen Reed was driving. There's no dispute that they all had a lot to drink. They had been bar hopping, including Karen Reed. She's not disputing that. There's probably too much to drink. As she sat in front of 34 Fairview, a car pulled in behind her. So she moved forward. The car that was behind her was the brother of somebody inside the residence who called for a ride home. NBC Boston did this awesome chart. It's got everybody on it. Obviously, John O'Keefe's on there. He is the police officer, the one that died in question. So Karen Reed is the subject of the trial. She was charged. She went through her first trial. It was declared a mistrial. More on that later. So these are the people that were on the inside that Brian Albert and Nicole Albert own the home. Brian Albert is the Boston police sergeant. There's a fella by the name of Brian Higgins, who is also a law enforcement officer. He works for ATF. He's assigned to that Canton area, and it's significant for a few reasons. One, he has an office inside Canton Police Department. Two, he was sparking a romantic relationship with Karen Reed. Just a week before this, Karen and John were kind of on the rocks, however you want to frame it, and Karen kissed this Brian Higgins unsolicited, and then they started a nice little text flirtation, like, wow, what was that? Or, the feeling is mutual and that kind of thing. So Karen is still attached to John O'Keefe. I guess they're trying to work things out. Brian Higgins obviously has an interest in Karen Reed, so he has an interest in luring Karen Reed and John O'Keefe over to this house. The other people you'll see on here, Brian Albert Jr., who is the son of obviously Brian Albert, but he is having a birthday, which is why a lot of people were gathered in this house. And you see everybody that he is connected to. The people that they can't confirm whether we're in the house or not are Chris Albert, who is the brother of Brian. Chris Albert is a former police officer, I believe, but he's also a politician in Canton. And then John O'Keefe. Nobody can confirm whether or not John O'Keefe was in there, and I think the cell phone data shows that it's possible that he was inside, but it's not exact. The next one in the web is Brian Albert Sr., and he was the Boston police officer. He has relationship, obviously, with Brian Higgins. He has a relationship with Chris Albert, who's his brother. He has significant relationships with everybody. Colin, obviously, with Kevin Albert, who is actually his brother and a detective in the Canton PD who recused himself from this case. Does seem kind of odd that a detective within the department was related to the people whose house where this occurred. Brian Albert, he has a relationship with John O'Keefe. He has a relationship with Matthew McCabe. And Nicole Albert, obviously his wife, with Caitlin Albert, his daughter, and Allison McCabe, who is a friend of the family. He's related to everybody in this thing, and it's kind of implied that Brian Albert is sort of like the Godfather. Like everybody knows this guy, and he knows everybody. Then there's Brian Higgins, who has this relationship with Karen Reed and with Brian Albert. He's good friends with Brian Albert. Okay, we take it a little bit further. Now we see this relationship with Chris Albert. Chris Albert is the brother of Brian. He was in the bar that night. He's kind of like it seems like he's the rational one that tries to keep everybody in check a little bit. He said that he went home afterwards and not to the home of his brother. He owns a local pizza shop where I think all of this conversation started about where the party was going to be later on that night. And he used to be neighbors with John O'Keefe. And Chris Albert is currently a selectman in Canton. So he is in a position of authority. So now we get to Jennifer McCabe. Jen McCabe is the sister of Nicole Albert, okay? And her friends are close with John O'Keefe's adopted children. If you remember at the beginning of the piece, they talked about how he adopted some children because their parents passed away. McCabe and her husband, Matt, they were among the group that was at the bar at the Waterfall. They carried the party on to the house on Fairview. And Jen is most noted for doing a Google search that says, "Hast long to die in cold." And it's a misspelling of how long to die in cold. There is currently dispute about when that search was done. Data shows that it was before the body was found. She said that it was done after the body was found at the direction of Karen Reed. They explain that it's possible that it could be done after the body was found because it was somehow taking the time of a Safari browser tab from a previous search. And that's why it looks like it was done before, but it was actually done after. There's a whole lot more to that. So we finally get down to Michael Proctor. Michael Proctor is a Massachusetts state trooper, a police officer, a detective, an investigator of some sort. When the Canton PD arrived, they called for the help of the Massachusetts State Police. They said specifically, we have a Boston police officer that is found dead. We're going to need your help with the investigation. They send this guy, Michael Proctor. Michael Proctor claims that he's impartial, that he's got nothing to do with nothing. He's just, there for the investigation. And when you start digging deeper into who Michael Proctor is, he not only led the investigation, he was the sole investigator. He, by the way, has since been fired from the Massachusetts State Police for vulgar text messages he sent about this case. But he has connections to Courtney Proctor, who has connections to Colin Albert and Michael Proctor. All right, Courtney Proctor is a friend of Colin Albert, who is the son of one of the Albert brothers and the nephew of Brian Albert, and was present that night. So when he says, there's no real connection, there's a huge connection. And in fact, Michael Proctor had somebody babysit his children in this group. There isn't anybody in this group that doesn't know everybody else, and what their claim is that they don't know each other. They continually say that in the first trial on the stand, that they don't know each other, that this is all just a big old coincidence. Well, the problem is Michael Proctor specifically was texting with his boss. He said some very crude things about Karen Reed. One of the interactions was somebody asked, is there any heat that's going to come to the homeowner, or something to that effect, meaning the Albert family? And he said, no, absolutely not. So he had already predetermined before he finished his investigation that no heat was going to come to the Albert family. Then his supervisor asked him if he was going through Karen Reed's phone, and he replied, no nudes yet. It's just completely unprofessional. You're dealing with the death of a human being, and your job is to determine if there was involvement by his girlfriend, and you're talking about nudes from her phone. He also got into a private conversation with somebody else about Karen Reed's looks. He called her the C word, and he also said that he wished that she would just kill herself, which would take care of all of the problems. So in light of all that, they did this entire investigation, the Massachusetts State Police, and they fired him. So the main witness in the state's case has been not only relieved of duty, he's been fired from the Massachusetts State Police. It's pretty significant. It's very hard to fire a trooper. You can go to NBC Boston and see this entire chart. It's very comprehensive.
Wait, before we go any further, I just want to say, hey, take a minute to hit like, hit subscribe, make sure you're following the Comm Center, leave a comment below, juice the algorithm, do everything you can do to help out a little channel. We'd appreciate it. And make sure you check us out on thecommcenter.com. All right, Drew, tell us the rest of the story.
Partygoers see Karen's SUV arrive at the Alberts home around 12:15. She leaves around 12:30, but nobody ever sees Karen or John go inside the residence.
It was snowing that night, and it was snowing pretty hard. At some point, it was blizzard conditions. Visibility was poor.
Karen Reed drives ostensibly from the Alberts house back to John O'Keefe's house, where she's staying that night. And between basically 12:40-ish and 5 o'clock, she calls him 53 times.
So there's a couple voicemails that they play. You're going to hear them in a second, but she called 53 times, so she was pissed. There is thought or talk, John, that there was an argument between the two about whether they were invited into this house or not, and that he just got out and went up there on his own. So she went home.
The voicemails are pretty key because for the defense, it establishes that John was inside the house, that he was ignoring her calls. The prosecution, however, is claiming that these are all made-up phone calls and that she's trying to establish an alibi, that she doesn't know where he is, even though she knows well that she left him on the side of the road and hit him with her car.
Coming home. I cannot babysitting me. I need to go home.
She leaves him 8 voicemails.
You're you bitches right now. Another girl. Living that today. You're a loser. Get down.
Denise then makes a phone call first to Carrie Roberts, a friend of both John O'Keefe and Karen Reed, saying John didn't come home, Karen's really upset, and Karen Roberts heard Karen Reed sort of in a heightened state in the background of that call.
Carrie Roberts meets Karen at John's house, where she calls 911.
Can't please sounding good.
Hi, my name is Carrie. I'm calling because my friend's boyfriend did not come home last night. They were at Waterfall, and now she is calling me hysterical because she doesn't know where he is. You didn't pick anybody up by the name of John O'Keefe, did you?
John O'Keefe?
Yeah, he's a Boston cop, and he would be on foot, but...
No.
I think he probably got a ride and passed out at someone's house. I don't know, but...
Yep, no, we didn't lock anybody up or anything like that. And where does he live?
He lives on Meadow, right after Pleasant.
John, you get these calls all the time.
Yeah, people always want to know if their loved one is in jail. They said that they've already called the hospitals, and the hospitals aren't giving up any information. And Sometimes it's difficult because the only thing you can tell them is where the next jail is that they should call.
Right. Very common too when people are in like infidelity type relationships, or they suspect their partner's in an infidelity type relationship, that they put that on the police department to become the private investigator sometimes.
He lives on Meadow off of Pleasant. Okay, and is the wife home? You said his girlfriend?
It's his girlfriend, yeah. They were out having drinks, and then she left and expected him to come home at some point, and he never did.
Yep.
And so I said to her, you know, my husband had been out with him earlier in the night, but then he came home, and he has custody of his niece and nephew because their parents passed away.
Okay.
And so she's home with the niece and nephew, and they're old enough to be home. It's just she's nervous because he never even called the niece.
Yeah.
So she's like, I feel like something happened. And I said, okay. Well, so he called the area hospital. Nobody happened. I personally think someone probably picked him up and he passed out. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He didn't drive last night?
No.
No. Okay. I mean,
No.
yeah. I mean, again, it's more. It would be driven by you. She would have to, call in, come to the station, and talk to us. But I mean, as of right now, it's more, he just didn't come home last night. Is this common sometimes?
Exactly.
Happen with him?
No. That's why.
Yeah.
Since he didn't tell his niece. That's kind of why she's more freaking out. So I figured I called the area hospital. I said I would call Canton police just to make sure he didn't get picked up. But like I said, he's a Boston police officer. He knows a bunch of people. Anybody could have picked him up.
Yeah.
Sleeping it off.
Okay.
Apparently they were having a blizzard party of some sort.
Yeah. No.
I don't know.
Unfortunately, I wasn't there. I was stuck here. But we didn't get any calls, anything like that. Nobody was arrested or anything like that.
Okay.
All righty.
All right. Well, thank you.
All right. No problem. Good luck.
Okay.
See ya.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So, John, what's your take on this call?
Well, this happens a lot when people are looking for other people, and when you hang up the phone, the first thought that maybe goes to your mind, if you're especially a true crime enthusiast, is this person trying to establish an alibi? They've called early and they've called on what they know is a recorded line, and they've already given a statement that's going to shape the way that the ensuing investigation about the whereabouts of John O'Keefe is going to take place. The bad part of this that criminals never think through is that they've already locked themselves into a story. If there's a piece of information about what actually happened to John O'Keefe that they don't know about, and they've already been on the record saying, well, this happened at this time, or he was with these people, it tends to incriminate people, even if only their story changes later.
You're right. The true crime enthusiasts always pick apart these phone calls right here, and usually castigate the cops, like, why didn't they ask this and why didn't they ask that? But you hear for yourself, like, a lot of times the true crime crowd has the benefit of hindsight, so they know that it was all legitimate information, that there's a reason he didn't call his niece, and there's a reason he didn't come home. Now, whether she had something to do with it or not, here's where I kind of split again. She's with Karen Reed, and she's a friend of Karen Reed's, and there's a concern with the niece, who obviously called her Jen McCabe, or called her Carrie Roberts, and Carrie Roberts came over to the house. She's not giving indications that Karen Reed is remorseful and knows what she did, and therefore she's calling to start this big social engineering process of creating an alibi. As a matter of fact, there was a point where Karen Reed called her and started talking to her and told her, you need to go back. You sound drunk. Like, she was still drunk, apparently. So you can make two arguments. One being, was she so drunk that she didn't realize that she hit this guy? Or two, did something happen to this guy and she genuinely didn't know where she was? She's now concerned. She's driving around looking for him, and she doesn't know what to do. And her friend's like, you got to get off the road because somebody's going to throw you in jail for DUI. And then what? now the kids have nobody right now, and we'll find John. So she goes over to the house and she tries to walk her through a process, and they start making their phone calls, and you hear the end product. You hear the conversation between the cop, by the way, and and her, the person that made the phone call. The reason I say it's a cop is because they did not employ dispatchers. Canton PD does not employ dispatchers. I don't know if they do now, but they had no civilians. They would rotate amongst the officers of who was going to answer the phones that night. Have you ever run into a situation like that?
I've never heard of that, to be honest with you. My state's a much smaller state, but in every PSAP that I'm aware of, it's all being run by civilian dispatchers. There is sub-counties that are so small that the only county employee you have on duty in the middle of the night is a sheriff's deputy with a cell phone who answers calls that go to the admin line, but 911 calls are still directed to a neighboring PSAP.
Speaking of 911 calls, we're about to
Along with Jennifer McCabe, the trio of women go out looking for John O'Keefe on the morning of January 29th.
Okay, so remember, it's Jen McCabe, the sister of Brian Albert's wife. It's Karen Reed sitting in the back seat, and Carrie Roberts are all three in the vehicle. And they're driving in this blizzard looking for John.
The three of them end up together in a car. Jen and Carrie in the front seat, Karen in the back seat. They drive to 34 Fairview, and as they're pulling up to the house, Karen Reed starts screaming and kicking the door and runs out of the car and runs to what Carrie Roberts said was a snowbank. And then Carrie Roberts said, this woman is crazy. What is she doing?
So there's that flagpole again, John. There's the house at 34 Fairview, and you can see the cars in the driveway. That right around where whoever took this picture, this is apparently where John O'Keefe's body was recovered.
It's interesting because if he was laying out front and if he was in the snow, unless he was completely buried, you'd think that people were coming in and out of the house would have seen him. Again, it all depends on how dark it is. It looks like there's probably not street lights here, so maybe it was too dark for a bunch of drunk people who are leaving a house who are not looking for a body in the street. But the essential question is was John O'Keefe laying out there all night long, or was he inside the house?
Well, the other thing to think about too is you mentioned being buried in the snow, the amount of snowfall overnight. So if his cell phone shows that he was outside, or if he's recovered with a bunch of snow on him, it's reasonable to believe that he was outside during the entire snowfall. But you're right, nobody picked up on the fact that he was out there. So this remains the mysterious part of this entire case. And unfortunately, we've been conditioned by social media to be in one of two camps. Either she's guilty of sin and you're crazy conspiracy theorists that cops are going to, get together and do this big, corrupt cover up. Or every cop is dirty. All cops are dirty, especially in this town. It's a very powerful family. And obviously they committed the murder. And so when social media has divided us, whether it was the 2016 election, 2020 election, whatever, 2024 election, it's divided us into two camps. But there could be a third explanation. There could be something else that happened. Like my understanding is that he had a bruise on the back of his hand. He had a cracked skull. What if he just slipped on the ice? What if she never saw him go in the house because he was down and he slipped on the ice and he just laid out there the whole night? The snow fell on him. Nobody saw him and nothing happened to him. Now he's got a bunch of marks on his arms, which would indicate what the state is trying to say is that those marks came from Karen Reed, backing into him, which is the reason the taillight is busted. Other people are saying that those marks are consistent with a dog bite or a dog scratching. The Albert family just so happened to have a dog by the name of Chloe, a German Shepherd, who they, quote, rehomed, end quote, right after this incident. And they all swore that, Chloe was just this gentle soul. But it was uncovered that Chloe had sent 2 other people to the hospital. So what if the enigma of the third theory, where maybe he just fell and cracked his head, and the dog went out there and saw him and freaked out and started digging in the snow. More snow fell on him, and then you fast forward to this moment.
The other reason why there's essentially 2 theories competing against each other, and it seems like a dilemma, is because that is the route that the defense is taking. The prosecution's making a case. They're telling a story. If you listen to the opening statements, it sounds like a true crime podcast. The prosecutor tells a story like you would be listening to a podcast about how Karen Reed and John O'Keefe had this relationship that was falling apart, and Karen left him on the side of the road outside of this house and made the decision to put the vehicle in neutral and then in reverse and then applied power to the accelerator. And all these telematics are telling a story about the vehicle accelerating, about John falling over, the temperature of the cell phone battery indicating that he was outside all night. What the defense has done is that they've presented an alternate story, and their alternate story is predicated on the fact that the police are corrupt. There is some serious misgivings when you go through information about Michael Proctor and various other people in the Albert family who also seem to have, like you said, positions of power. The selectman there who oversees the police. It's in a very incestuous relationship. It's something that you find in small towns. But they want to spin all these close relationships and this incestuous police power into the idea of a cover-up. So their alternate theory is that somehow police officers or other people that are inside this house were responsible for John O'Keefe. And they don't have to make the same case that the prosecution does. They don't have to come up with a reason why someone inside the house, a police officer or someone else, would have reason to take out John O'Keefe. They just have to present it as a plausible story. I think you're right when you say that it's possible that a third thing might be going on that's neither the prosecution's case or the defense's case. It's possible that Karen Reed left him by the side of the road and willfully, through an act of deliberate indifference or willful, she wanted to harm him. But it's also possible that the police were unethical in their prosecution, that she's both guilty and framed at the same time. Drew?
Yeah. It all remains to be seen, but you're right. This is exactly like the reminder you gave in the Hannah Payne case. There is no us versus them in this system. Okay, it's going into it. The defendant already has a head start. The defendant is innocent until proven guilty. And to prove her guilty, you have to give proof beyond a reasonable doubt. They don't have to give an explanation of why or how he died. They just have to give the explanation of how it's not possible that she did it. That's all they have to do to create reasonable doubt. Reasonable doubt, not, like, oh yeah, it's 100% doubt. It's just a reasonable story.
The police have done plenty to bring skepticism to them. The problem is you have a presumption of innocence by a defendant in a criminal proceeding, but you also have a presumption, and rightfully so, that the police are going to investigate a death like this properly and with professionalism. And when the police are making missteps like sending inappropriate text messages to each other, and when you have strange situations like a Boston police officer dying just outside the house of another police officer, and the owner of that property also being related to the victim without any establishing that people should be recusing themselves and we should be having someone from Boston State Police or some other agency coming in and investigating all these parties. When you have that incestuous soup, it's the old saying is, if it looks bad, it's bad for the police. And even if the police are just unprofessional but ultimately handled the case properly, it makes them look guilty. And so now you have this false dyad of, is Karen Reed guilty or are the police guilty?
Right.
And then realizes that in that snowbank is John O'Keefe. She said he was buried under inches of snow.
How did Karen Reed know exactly where to look? Maybe at some point she had a flash of memory. For whatever reason, that's where she went. She's kind of in hysterics. Jen McCabe calls 911.
I don't see blankets, Terry.
911, what's emergency?
Yes, I need someone to come immediately to 34 Fairview Road, Canton, Mass.
What's going on?
There's a guy unresponsive in the snow.
In the snow at
He
34?
passed out, yes. 34, the Albert resident, yes. I just pulled up and found him.
Okay, 34 Fairview.
34 Fairview, Canton, Mass, yes.
911, that's on recorded. Where's your emergency?
No, sir, no, no.
Hello?
Yes, I'm sorry. Can you come to 34 Fairview Road in Canton?
34 Fairview?
Yes, there's a man unresponsive in the snow.
Okay. Is he blue at all?
You've got to get here, okay?
Okay. What's going on? Is he face down?
We just flipped him over.
Okay. And who's that in the background? Is that someone related?
Okay, that's his girlfriend. His name is John O'Keefe.
Okay, how old is he?
John is 46 years old.
46. How long has he been outside?
I don't know. I don't know. He got out of the car and
is he breathing?
A couple of hours. Is he Carrie? Is he? I don't know if he's breathing. There are two women trying to do his body heat, and they're hysterical.
Okay, can you just try to ask him? I know it's tough, but we already have the fire department going. They just got to know if he's breathing.
Is he breathing, you guys? No. It doesn't seem to be breathing.
Okay, do they know how to do CPR? Do they want to attempt CPR?
You guys, Carrie, can you guys do CPR? Yeah, I guess he's gone.
Okay, they don't feel comfortable doing so?
All right, so, John, here's a couple things I've heard this call a couple times. A couple things that stand out just this one time and hit me. She said, no, we just flipped him over. Meaning he must have been face down, right? If they just flipped him over and they're in a position to do CPR. Am I reading that wrong?
My guess would be that if he was face down and he appeared to be unconscious, that would generate a 911 call. And then as they tried to assess his condition, they would flip him over. And then when you turn someone over and they've been dead for several hours, you're going to see liver mortis, which is the blood pooling at the lowest point of the body. So his face is going to appear bloated, purple, and frozen. And it's going to be very obvious that he's expired. And turning that over is going to be a traumatic thing for the people that are there finding his body.
The thing is, that may not have set in because the death might not occur right away. One, two, the temperature is going to have something to do with that because your body temperature your body is going to slow down metabolism wise. But also, one of the causes of death was hypothermia. So the fact that he was exposed to the cold like that. So I found it weird that also that she said he got out of the car. Like, if I remember right, that's what she said. And how did she know that? You know what I mean?
Well, it's always strange to me when you're assessing the condition of a patient right now, and all of a sudden this is obviously traumatic and chaotic, but now we're talking about something that happened 6-7 hours ago.
Right.
People do instinctively go into story time mode when they want to explain how we got here. So it's possible that she could just be saying how it is that he reached this place in the first place, that he got out of the car. That was the last place Karen Reed saw him. And again, from here, this is where the criminal act either occurred or it didn't. Either she hit him or he slipped or a third thing happened. So it could just be that she's exasperated and trying to tell the dispatcher everything that she does know.
And true, also, even if it is an accident, this is a criminal act because she was admittedly under the influence at the time, which is one of the charges. So even if it's like a negligence, like she didn't mean to hit him, she still has some criminal culpability.
And failure to report.
The failure to report part does require that she know, however.
John O'Keefe is transported to receive medical attention. He has minor abrasions. He has a bruise on the back of his right hand. But mostly what we're looking at is multiple skull fractures. He also has 2 black eyes, and those can be consistent with head trauma.
John O'Keefe was transferred to the hospital.
The black eyes is what we call battle wounds. That's an indicative of brain trauma.
And he was declared dead. Now, law enforcement has to figure out What on earth happened to him?
Police officers arrive. The snow is really coming down now. It's really a blizzard now. And it's just kind of this frantic scene. Over the course of those frantic several minutes, Karen Reed said some version of the words, "Did I hit him? Could I have hit him?" Plus, they had confiscated her car and she had a broken taillight, and there were pieces of taillight found on the ground near John's body. And so that seems to be the evidence early on that made them say Karen Reed was their suspect.
On February 1st, Karen Reed is arrested and charged with second-degree murder, manslaughter while operating a vehicle under the influence of alcohol, and leaving the scene where personal injury or death occurred. Karen pleads not guilty to these charges.
But could something else have happened to John O'Keefe other than Karen Reed hitting him with her car and leaving him to die in the snow?
Really, in this case, we're left with more questions than answered. First of all, was this an accident or a homicide? And what was it that O'Keefe actually went through? Was he struck by a vehicle? Were his injuries the result of some type of altercation? What's the motive here? We don't really know at this point.
It seems pretty damning, but the defense actually has a lot of answers for these things, saying that initial sweeps for evidence by the police did not find any pieces of taillight. They claim that they have video outside of Karen Reed's home of her leaving in a hurry to go try to find John and her damaging her own taillight, and discrepancies of the log of when the detective took custody of that evidence. Drew.
It was inept, if not, it's like beyond sloppy. The processing of that scene and in the investigation itself. It's not something that you would want as a family member for your loved one when you're trying to figure out what exactly happened. It's just not. And so this is why I say, like, this anti-police crowd that's like, oh, they're just a bunch of corrupt idiots and they're just blah, blah, blah. You have to remember that this is a police officer victim. So by saying that, you're saying that they covered up. If we were so protective of one another, as you say, wouldn't they be protective of the cop that was killed? So I think
that's a perspective of a police officer. When you try to tell that to a jury, outside of that, Drew, people see the myth of the thin blue line, right? The brotherhood of the badge, that even if it was the wrong thing to do, that they protect each other from prosecution. And that's what the prosecution has to overcome. That's what the defense is saying, is that there's this brotherhood of the badge, this code of silence, that even if they did the wrong thing, and even if it was to a fellow cop, that they would sit on it.
There were a few phone calls, we're going to go into in the next episode, the evidence recovery. We'll talk about the reason why it was significant that this black Lexus was put at the Canton PD, things that came out at trial that were just complete shockers. And by the way, her verdict. So her verdict was very interesting. Just, so you'll know, or you probably know, if she's got a retrial. Obviously there was an issue in the first trial. The first trial ended in a mistrial declared by the judge because they were given instructions that they needed to have resolution for all three cases, just like in Hannah Payne when we talked about that.
All three charges had to have some kind of resolution. And if any one of the charges were guilty, then the other two may, like she's going to be found guilty of all three, or some instruction that's unclear. It seemed like it had to be all or nothing, because if they were a hung jury, and the defense actually tried to have some of these charges dismissed, saying, if this is a hung jury, then what are the charges that the jury is not convinced on? Because if they're not willing to convict, then that's a de facto acquittal on at least some of those charges. And they wanted those charges dropped before they had to go to retrial.
So that's exactly what happened. A juror came forward afterwards, unprecedented, pretty much, and said, we weren't deadlocked. We were deadlocked on one of the three charges. The other two were unanimous, like absolutely she's not guilty. And one of them we were kind of, and I believe that was the manslaughter. It was the operating motor vehicle. So what the defense in this case is saying, okay, the state has come in because of the mistrial and charged her again with these 3 crimes, but there's already been a jury that's found her essentially not guilty of these other 2. If the jury instructions had been given properly, she'd be not guilty in these other 2 charges. You can't charge her again. That case is currently in the Supreme Court. It's a very interesting kind of legal battle that I'm dying to see the outcome of. That's a very good point. Like they're already settled on 2 of these cases. I don't like these bingo card verdicts like we saw in this case, like we see in Hannah Payne. I don't like this, like it's all or nothing. Either, all you got to do is find her guilty on one of them and she's good to go on the rest. That's not how this works. That's exactly why they separate the charges. But even in this case, they have one charge that kind of says, well, it could have been an accident, so we're going to charge her with that. You can find her guilty of that. Or it wasn't an accident and she just wanted to kill him because she wanted to hook up with this other dude. And if you find her guilty of that, she's guilty of the other 2. And that's not fair. That's not how our criminal justice system should work.
What's amazing is this is a very data-driven case. The prosecution has said that. The temperature of the cell phone battery, whether or not that indicates that he was outside, the voicemails and the text messages exchanged between John and between Karen, but they only sort of imply a story. It's going to be up to the jury to decide. So we're going to be going through this all again, and the jury's going to have to fill in some blanks there that the technology suggests, yeah, he was outside. However, the defense could claim that he was murdered inside the house and then dumped outside shortly thereafter. So the jury's going to have to decide whether or not this alternate story exonerates Karen Reed or at least provides reasonable doubt for her. What do you guys think? Do you think that she's going to get a hung jury again, or will she get a conviction? If you want to be a part of the show, call 848-COMM-911. That's 848-266-6911. You can leave a voicemail for us like this one.
Hey, guys. It's Eggs and Hamwich. I've been posting on your board. I'm going to be a little late to your broadcast tonight, but my question to you is, do you think this lawyer has a chance at another appeal for Linda, or has that run dry? I mean, I can't imagine her getting another trial, and I think it would be really selfish of her to drag her poor sons through that. Anyways, enjoying your channel, and I hope you're well.
It would be extremely selfish of her to pursue another trial. However, you have to look at it through the lens of Linda Sturmer. This is her life. Is she just going to accept this and be in prison for the rest of her life if she truly is not guilty? And as far as her relationship with her sons, I don't think that she cares about those kids. If she did, she wouldn't have set their father on fire and run over him with a car if that's what happened. So I have no doubt that she's going to be seeking an appeal. Whether or not she'll be granted one, I think it's rather unlikely. The fact that this is the second time around, there are a lot of safeguards put in place to avoid the pitfalls of the first one. And hopefully they don't have another one, because I'm not sure that Connie Calhoun and other people that were called to testify in this can stand to go through this again, whether it's this year, next year, or 8 years from now. Drew?
This is a hot button case. Look, this is about the Linda Sturmer case, if you're not familiar. And I think that ham and egg sandwich, if I got that name right, is definitely onto something, because what does she have to lose? I mean, really, what does she have to lose? And she was already successful one time and being free for years and years and years. I don't think she's going to beat. I don't think that she's going to be successful in getting this because you know why? The prosecution had a second chance. They already found her guilty once, and the prosecution had a second chance at clearing up any inconsistencies or any notion that they did something unfairly. They did it right this time. That prosecutor was on her game. I'm not taking anything away from that defense attorney or the defense team, but that prosecutor shored up everything that needed to be shored up. Now, if you talk to Linda's daughters, yeah, of course she's going to appeal. We want you to discuss, to ferret it out, to hash it out in the comments section. You're probably going to get some kind of response out of us if whether you agree or you disagree. But if you disagree with something, please say it in the comments. We have definitely been given great information that swayed our opinion in the past, just from people in the comments section. So on a very emotional case like this, and one of the Sturmer children actually commented on John's video here. If you like what you see, please don't hesitate to hit the like button. YouTube likes it when you like us. And if you disagree with something we say, please make sure you put it in the comments. People didn't hold back last time, and I want to make sure that we get the story right.
If you do like us, if we are your cup of tea, make sure you check us out on social media. Whatever your favorite social media platform is, check us out. Make sure you hit like, hit subscribe, do all the YouTube things. We appreciate it. Thanks for keeping up with the Comm Center. And yeah, check out all of our Linda Sturmer stuff. Look at this video right here. This was a good one, Drew. I was in this one.
That's right. It's here.
That's right. It's right there.